Well, one of the reasons I wanted to do this whole thing was because feeling adrift in the modern world with motorways and industrial estates, and I've got this little newsletter thing I do called Talismans Against Boring Culture.
Love it.
Yeah. And boring culture, it's a little bit of an insult, which was the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But it's back to that thing of being brought up in a circus and being brought up in an unusual little village in the South Pennines called Hebden Bridge,
mm-hmm.
and then you think that's normal, that the rest of the world should be like that.
Yes.
You get a bit older and realise it is not.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh shit,
yeah,
what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Where's the soul?
Yeah.
That was my reaction.
Yeah.
Intense loneliness.
Yeah.
Living in places like Middlesbrough and other cities.
Yeah.
And then realising that actually the people that I've grown up with, all these sort of hedge witches, my mum's friends, and all
mm-hmm.
the crazy circus performers and artists and sometimes engineers and scientists as well, real unusual characters. I feel like they're part of a tradition, a living tradition that has many roots. So what I wanted to do with this project,
mm-hmm.
Fantasy Creates Reality, it's called, which is like I think Jung said something like that. Fantasy creates reality every day, which is a good and a bad thing, and it depends on what the fantasy is. But it's okay, can I do something online with social media that contributes something to whatever that tradition is, and I don't fully understand what it is, so I'm kind of trying to discover it as I go along.
Okay.
And I've got some clues. There are certain words that are useful, like a mythopoeic tradition, animistic tradition, the feeling that the world is alive and souled, and that a community of creative practice is a good thing for deep reasons.
Uh-huh.
And so with this, I wanted to talk to scientists, creative scientists, visiting Stephen Harding after this, the ecologist who worked with James Lovelock,
mm-hmm.
just come from Terry Windlings, who recommended I speak to you. She's a friend of yours.
Indeed.
And you're an artist.
Yes, I am.
So thanks a lot for letting me into your beautiful studio.
Oh, well, it's really lovely to have you, Ben. And like I said to you earlier, not many people are allowed in here, so...
It's an honour. What are these things behind you?
What are the things behind me? Well, this is it's something I made when I was at college, and it's a house on wheels, which is an image that crops up a lot in my life and work.
A moving house.
But inside it, there's a story on a scroll which turns as you turn the wheels. It's got a bit ancient. Underneath there are. I'll take it off. It's very dusty and it probably needs mending because it's years old and it's full of spiders. But there's cogs underneath.
Oh right, is that story written in runes?
So the story, no, it's I wrote the story too. Let's get the spiders off.
Right, amazing, you made that.
But it's written in a spiral, so as you go along, the whole story will pass by, and it's it's a kind of fable in there.
Wow.
So the story passes by the windows. It's kind of quite representative of the way my mind works.
Super interesting sort of juxtaposition of like mechanics.
Yeah.
And I mean the spiral is kind of a deep structure of imagination and the universe. Galaxies work in spirals. Some people think time works in spirals. I think of William Blake's image of Jacob's ladder.
Oh yeah.
It's not a straight line thing. It's a spiral, like the double helix.
DNA,
yeah.
I mean, I figured out it wouldn't work if you had to keep doing that. It was smoother. But then I thought practically that you would end up having to stand in the centre of a circle to be able to read the story continuously if you drove it along, so that it continued to pass around you, or you could walk along next to it. But do you see what I mean?
Yeah. And we're surrounded by images that you've made and things from your life, like there's a dagger there that you said was your grandfather's, and there are these amazing images that feel archetypal, but they're nuanced and inflected in a way that I've not really seen before. And they're often on chunks of old wood.
Yes.
Oak and different kinds of trees.
Yeah.
And
this one, yes, is on oak. I don't know if the camera's catching that. Yeah, this is a weed wife.
A weed wife.
The weed wife, yeah. She. This is a great big heavy chunk of oak, which is also covered in dust.
Where did you find that?
I think I was given it. I can't remember how. I've got so many chunks of wood that you pass by up the stairs, ready to be painted on. And yeah, she comes from my relationship to the plants, really, and it's kind of like a love song to the plants, and all of these plants are particular plants that I met and got to know. And
could you tell us about some of the plants?
Some of the plants, well, this one here that's over her heart is called Heartsease, and there's stories around all of these plants. We've got hawthorn in its flower and in its berry. There's yarrow in her hand. There's lady's mantle above her head, and nettle and ivy. This is mullein. There are brambles around her legs, which is interesting actually, because the painting that's just behind you is another one with the brambles surrounding.
Oh, this one, yeah.
The body.
This is a work in progress.
Very early stages, and that one is more about pain and the piercing of thorns and yeah, the sort of I'm trying to explore the physical feeling of pain, heart pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good touchstone, because yesterday me and Terry Windling were talking about the Numinous and
yes.
the longing for the other world.
Yes.
Ancient Greeks had the word pothos, which is the unfulfilled longing with the beyond, and people that gravitate to the mythopoetic tradition or to fantasy feel that embodied in the realm of Faerie. And I know that you have some resonance with that.
Definitely.
But it's like there's such a difference between the ordinary world, if you could call it that, and this other world that I feel people like you are reaching for in their work. Yeah,
I'm really, really interested in this question, because I've always been drawn to folktale, fairy tale, and particularly these tales and descriptions of people being taken off to Faerie, or even just the strangeness of the feeling in the worlds that are described. And for me, I think over the years I've come to realise that my paintings I've started to call them doorways. So I feel like what I'm actually making are doorways to the other world. That there's a sort of portal-esque flavour to them, and that people, when they approach them, have a different experience depending on what their own inner world is like. So what they find on the other side is personal to them, and sometimes people come and ask me to explain the painting, and I won't, because it's for them. I've done my bit, and what they find in there is their adventure. And I've seen people react quite strongly. People who encounter my work for the first time, and when I'm there, and sometimes they will cry, and sometimes they'll find it too intense, and sometimes they just many times over the years people have said, "Oh, it's like something I remember, but not quite, not like from childhood, but not really from my childhood. It's kind of like a dream, but it feels ancient but really familiar." And they can't quite find the words, but it's in that space. They're describing something that's strange and familiar, and it feels old and it has that kind of childhood quality to it, and I'm really fascinated with what that is and why my work does that to people, because it's not something I'm deliberately trying to conjure up. I'm creating from a kind of a soul place, I suppose, in me, and I'm really interested in this concept of doorways between the worlds, because I think there are many things that can be doorways in that way, and I think that they're really necessary, that humans need that. And we sometimes, in these stories, they're describing how to get there and how to get back, which is the key, because sometimes people get stuck there. In some of the fairy stories, if people eat of the fairy food, they can't come back, or they come back and they find that hundreds of years have passed and all their families have died and buildings have crumbled and so on, and it's a big deal. But I'm also even more kind of drawn to this question more recently, because a few years ago I developed epilepsy out of the blue, and following the birth of my youngest son, having never had seizures in my life before, and so I've had a few years of a really, really traumatic and intense time of having big seizures. But as part of my exploration of that and of what's going on in my brain and why, I've done lots of reading, and I'm still doing that. I'm trying to find out how people view epilepsy, because it's an old disease. It's in the sense that it's been described in old texts, and in some places it's been known as the sacred disease.
Has it?
Yeah, and
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And in some places, some cultures, it's seen as a sort of blessing, and quite an intense blessing, but a marking of somebody who then has the qualification to become the village magician, and that you can't do that job without having epilepsy. And in other places it's seen as a curse. It's seen as, there are places in South America where it's described that your spirit animal, your nagual, has been attacked in the spirit world, and that's why you're having a seizure in this world. So it's not a good thing. And I'm still kind of early days to sort of learning about this, what this thing is that's come to me and why. But the experience of having the seizure is so strange and so terrifying that it has this quality about it, which I'm trying to kind of figure out. I'm trying to figure out in this sort of wider context of being taken away to fairyland, and not remembering anything when you come back, because I don't. I'm utterly racked bodily, and I don't remember things when I come back. So it's like, well, where have I been exactly?
You just have the residual feeling of having been through it.
Yeah, I mean, you're physically beaten up. All your muscles hurt. You've bitten through your tongue. You've wet yourself. It's really full on.
Fucking hell! I didn't know that.
Yeah, but you can't remember anything, and you don't know where you are, who, what's happened, who you don't understand words sometimes, and everyone's experience of seizures can be different. But
it's like you've been assaulted by a ghost.
Kind of, and I've tried to draw it. I've tried to paint this experience of, and I've found myself describing it to people like I've got this entity, this spirit has come into my life, and he's standing behind me all the time, and any point when he wants to, he can come and just tap me on the shoulder and take me away there again. So I'm trying to figure out why this is happening, and how it connects to my sort of unusual connection to this otherworld place in my life, in a wider sense, And I guess that's just it's also just my way of trying to make meaning out of a traumatic experience as well. But it's really interesting to me as well on a kind of intellectual level, and trying to sort of stitch together all the parts of my life, and the trying to figure out what is this place, because it's definitely been something that's interested me all my life, and I've certainly had strange otherworldly experiences as a child that, you know, maybe are connected to all of this. I don't know. And, there's more research for me to do.
Yeah, and I like this idea of having multiple approaches to figuring out what's going on to the truth. And Iain McGilchrist talks about. Do you know him?
I do. I actually discovered him recently. I went to see a talk that he did in Dartington. He came, and I went because it was about the brain, and he was with Satish Kumar talking about the brain from these different angles, and I was like, wow, this man, who is he? So I bought his book. He's incredible, and he's so everything he says is full of protein and concise yet overflowing with wisdom and like you say, really broadly sort of straddling lots of disciplines.
And he talks about having science, reason, intuition and imagination, and we need all of those, and they all need to be protected, and sometimes they're done separately, sometimes they influence and inform each other, but that is good. So what I want to do with this is try and make a bit of a bridge between those people who maybe have not had as many out there otherworldly experiences that might kind of transform their sense of what's going on in the world, because we're told a story that we're adrift in a meaningless mechanical cosmos, and we have to come to terms with that, which I don't believe, and I know that you don't either, just from 10 minutes talking to you. And you mentioned something before about there's one idea of epilepsy, you were saying, of it being like your nagual or spirit animal in another world, another plane of reality, being attacked and it's in trouble. So to some people watching this, I think that will make complete sense to them. You know, they have different ways of understanding it. I don't think most people take that literally. It's metamorphic and metaphoric and imaginal. These are different kinds of realities. There's not only one kind of reality. And one way just to simply begin to loosen up your thinking around these things that's been useful for me is just to remember that we're co-evolved through millions of years of evolution in relationship with other animals. This is what David Abram articulates really well. He says our sensory perceptions, the silken web that binds our separate nervous systems into the encompassing ecosystem, and also that our sensory perception, our brains, our entire bodies are formed in subtle reciprocity and relationship with wild sounds, winds, like wolves trying to kill us. And a whole vast tapestry of sensory relationships through vast spans of time. And symbiogenesis, like the work of Lynn Margulis, who worked with James Lovelock on Gaia theory. The cells of our bodies, are the organism that is us, the animal that's us, is kind of a communion of many different creatures, not a commune, but a communion of many different creatures. Bacterial creatures, more bacterial entities in our bodies than human cells, they say. So just having that starts to, for me, liquefy the wall between human beings and the planet, the fabric and life of the planet. We are the planet. You say that and sometimes you can get dismissed as a kind of people are suspicious. What are you saying there? You're sort of some new age wacko. But it's backed up by a vast body of science, and it's just a simple statement, really, isn't it? We've grown within this incredible, mysterious, ancient orb that's drifting around the the sun, our local star.
Yes, absolutely, and I feel, I mean, David Ebram expresses it so beautifully always that, you know, it's poetry the way he describes these connections and these conversations between things. But I think that's fundamental to what you're saying there is that, you know, we are storied creatures. You know, we've always needed story right from the beginning. We've telling the stories about things has made things make sense. The things that don't make sense, and you could say that all the different disciplines are different ways of telling stories. You know, if science is a story, it is a story. It is, you know, it's one way of talking about all the way that the things work. And I'm not used to having a microphone. I keep bashing it.
That's okay.
And so, yeah, I think that everyone can understand that also. It's a very human level of it doesn't feel alien. The fact that we actually need story to make things make sense and to make things feel okay, things that don't feel okay, things that feel frightening. You know, if we put it through this mythic, if we change it into this kind of mythic fabric, it somehow our brains can absorb it in a different way, I think. And talking about things, making art about things, and talking about things in a beautiful language, it's like food to us. So we can absorb it in the way we absorb food, and it becomes nourishment, and it stops being something that's outside us, but becomes something that is of us, and it becomes a bridge. I think then the things that are outside us that feel ununderstandable or alien can become part of us, in the way that myth makes these things into nourishment for us, because it dissolves those boundaries in between the atoms of things, I think. And it becomes those threads, those silken threads.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying here. And some people's understanding of myth is that it's a myth, it's a lie.
Yeah.
Which is very different to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a guy, what's he called? Mythologist. I think he's called Sean Kane. And he describes myth as the song of the land sung back to itself that humans sort of overhear and join in with.
Yeah.
And I like that because it includes us in it, and it includes a kind of intelligence, a different kind of intelligence in the world.
Yes.
And voice.
Yes.
And language.
Yes.
And story and song is not only a property of human beings.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And so if myths are the sacred stories of a culture that have no author, that are co-authored in relation between the land and the human beings, including human culture and the darknesses of human culture. Myths are not, automatically only good and only beautiful. But in the UK, in the British Isles, we have our own sacred stories that have got roots in many other cultures and countries. And I'm just curious, because you seem like we're here in the south of England, in the British Isles, and you're painting on pieces of old oak. And oak being, I think, the root word for oak is door.
Yes.
And you're creating these doorways. So, which of the stories, the myths of these old isles, do you feel drawn to? Which are most alive for you?
Interesting question, because this idea of rootedness and of being from a place is something that I'm continually wrestling with. I am pretty much from these isles. My mum comes from New Zealand, but her ancestors came from the British Isles in a larger sense. There are sort of some interesting threads which I'm still exploring on both sides, but predominantly, I'm of this place. I was born in London, and I do feel a deep kinship to this place, and yet so much in my work seems to come from somewhere else, and lots of people talk about it when they see my work, and they see Eastern Europe, they see Slavic myth, they see something like that, which is quite hard to put your finger on, and it's definitely there. I mean, I'm very, very drawn to sort of Eastern Europe, Southeast Europe, that sort of that part of the world, in a sense that I play the accordion, I play the music of those lands, and the folk tales draw me too, and I don't know why this is, and I can't really explain it, and I'm still sort of trying to hunt for the root of that, and I can't really tell whether it's something to do with that place, and if I went there and really hunted for this unknown feeling, whether I would find it there, or whether it's not actually in a place but it somehow dwells in something else, whether it's in people, in music, I don't know. It's still a sort of live question for me, and yet I feel this a deep kinship with this land and the colours of this land and the green grey of the British Isles, and there's something in the mist, and down here in Devon the moss and the lanes and the thatched cottages and the granite and the quality of the coastline and the moors, and it's very particular, but when it's your place, it's hard to see it except when you go away and come back again sometimes. I remember coming back as a child from having been in New Zealand, and coming back and noticing the difference like someone had turned down the contrast massively on the colours. Like in New Zealand it was bright blues and it was summer, and I'd come back to winter time here and everything was grey. It felt, wow, I didn't realise this country was so grey. And I don't say that in a negative sense. I just mean it's kind of got this mist, which I feel you do feel in the Celtic myths. This quality of mist is somehow there, and the tales where the Faerie are present in that kind of slightly threatening way, where there's a folk belief in them that's unquestioned. There's just, you mustn't go to this place or cross over this boundary, or do this certain thing, or you will end up in the land of Faerie. It makes a lot of sense in this landscape, and I feel, I don't know about you, but the further west you go, where the influence of the sort of invasions of various different peoples over the years into the British Isles, the remnants down the western side of the Isles, it still feels a lot more potent. And even here, if you go further west into the far west of Cornwall, it's sort of more crackling, and western Scotland, and I don't know Ireland very well, but I've heard tell that it's like that very much there.
Yes, I've only been to the west of Ireland once.
Yeah.
And what they say is true.
It's true, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you tell us about your love of colour?
Yes, I would. It's certainly a question that has come stronger to mind more recently, the more I think about how the brain works, and thinking about people who have synesthesia and who have a visceral sensory experience of colour or something else in it, through a different sense, because during my seizures I have it's like somebody has crossed the wires with my senses, so that I I have very strong smells of memories, for example. So it's like, it doesn't make sense. I can't. It's very, very difficult to describe what the experience is like. But it's made me think about the brain, and it's like, well, what is happening, and why do I have such strong experiences with colour, which I always have done, and I have a very my palette feels certainly it's got an earthen layer to it, so I struggle to be around bright chemical colours, that the colours of particularly like a sort of a bright garish blues and whites. I can't seem to stand in my environment, and definitely this kind of madder red is that's really probably this is actually dyed with madder, so it's
Oh, I thought you said madder as in insane.
No, madder as in the root of the plant, which is used to make this colour, to dye this colour.
Oh, right.
And it's got a particular kind of slightly terracotta, slightly burgundy kind of combination, which seems to be, I think for me it's like blood. There's something really, really fundamental to it.
This kind of red is worlds apart from that lurid primary red.
Yeah. Pillar box kind of red.
Yeah, exactly. And it has within it that kind of mist, that slight softening that you're talking about, that's such a part of the spirit of these isles. Yes,
and I suppose the light that gets diffused through these mists, or through the because where we are on the globe, that the sun is at a certain height, and so the light through the layers of atmosphere means that the colours are different, and you'll notice that the colours are different at different times of the day. In the evening there's a different cast to things than there is in the morning, and so it's not a static thing. The colours only exist in relation to the light, so the colour, I suppose, is of a place, and in the same way as I described coming back from New Zealand, where everything was bright, people will wear different colours in different parts of the world because it makes sense in that place. It's like, it's part of, not only is it made from roots of the land, but it's connected to the light and the way that the place of that particular bit of earth on the globe, and also, the way the light moves through water and makes it a particular turquoise or a grey-green, and things like that. It's for me a very embedded experience. The colour, in the way I make my home is very, very conscious of colour, and the beauty as a wider concept is also deeply important to me, and I think it's really, really overlooked in our modern world. What our eyes find beautiful, and it gives us a kind of sense of restfulness, the way things are arranged together, the shapes of things, the materials that things are made from, the way our eyes fall on a natural fabric as compared to a synthetic fabric. It's we may not even think about it, but it gives us a different feeling. So the feeling that you get in a motorway service station is utterly wrong. Like, for me, I find it so distressing, and I know that you mentioned you find the same. It's everything. Not only is all everything around you is made not to matter. It's made as just a functional, non-lasting, commercial environment that doesn't have to be beautiful, or at least it wasn't thought that it needed to be beautiful. But it means that not only that, but the people, nobody belongs there. Everyone's passing through. The people who work there don't care about the place. It's a place that's in between other places, and isn't potent in the normal way of liminal spaces, but is somehow utterly devoid of soul.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that the beauty of a place really, really does matter.
It does, and beauty is hard to talk about because it feels like we've had these kind of grey lenses placed over our sensory perception, and those grey lenses have in them hundreds of years of mechanical philosophy and over intellectualization, which dulls the senses, and it feels like that it's sort of normal to not be aesthetically alive.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe part of the reason for that is just being alive is difficult, and it's frightening and requires an awful lot of courage to be fully alive and allow yourself to feel things and feel the joy and pleasure in the colours of the world or in any experience, because you have to also then feel the pain of the experience, and there's so much pain and there's so much darkness going around that kind of course people would not want to feel that. It feels like though it's been especially amplified in the last sort of few hundred years maybe, just if you look at the world that we inhabit, like these motorway service stations. Some service stations are getting quite nice now with fluid green roofs. There's one or two knocking around.
I've not seen those yet.
These are exceptions, right? The broken glass on the walls of Middlesbrough and the skyline dominated by chemical works. All the motorways, and it's great to be able to get to places quickly sometimes, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the feeling of moving through these places, and if you open yourself up to the experience of those places, it's like you're being assaulted by them, and you don't feel like taken care of or inspired, or a sense of that fluorescent overhead lighting in office rooms, and the rectilinear way that they're laid out, even if it's open plan. Often they might have these kind of like space age pods, and then that's the sort of concession. Here's a little bit of curvature in all the straight lines, and so one idea is that, to talk mythically, that Aphrodite, who is the goddess of, I like to imagine it as courageous sensuality, because Eros is her son, and there's love and beauty, but it's courageous sensuality, and to be alive to the senses, because without Aphrodite you can't see things, you can't take pleasure in colour or texture, or a moment with a friend, or the taste of a cup of coffee, or an almond croissant, or whatever it is. And if we talk about who are the misfits today, who are the ones that have been really suppressed in mythical terms, so not human cultures and human people, that's good to talk about and important to talk about, but just concentrating on the mythic presences who inhabit our bodies, cultures and worlds. One idea is that Aphrodite has been repressed for centuries, millennia maybe, by all kinds of ways, by monotheisms, by materialistic science, and by probably lots of other things as well. So that's a bit of a long ramble there in response to what you were saying.
Well, I like this idea of courageous sensuality, because that some of us are sensitives, or empaths, or whatever the language is, that we are. We have our experience of sensing the world turned up to the max, and I certainly have that experience all the time, and it's like an onslaught, and it's beautiful, and it's full, and it's exhausting, and it's many things. So it means that experiences of motorway service stations, also of big gatherings of people, or of heightened emotions, of anything really. Of a person sitting near me. I'm experiencing their emotional reality quite strongly, and and similarly with the colours or the sounds. It feels like, as an artist, you're given these tools so that you can. The world can come into you, and you can tell a story about it through you've alchemized it and made it into something else that is then a story for other people to be able to imbibe all of this sensory experience, but with the added layer of beauty, or of lyricism, or whatever the medium is. So if it's a visual art, or if it's music, or I've talked about the creation of a painting of mine called The Alchemist, which is very much a description of this kind of process. It's shaped like this, and in the centre is a young woman who is dressed in a dress of many coloured stripes, and she's holding her hands like this, and inside her hands is her heart visible. Above her, all around her head, above the nimbus around her head, are many musicians playing lots of instruments, and then at her legs are crossed, and at her feet are pots of pigment, and then to either side there's a man, woman, or a mother and father figure, and there's beyond them are phoenixes. So for me, the idea of this painting came in a moment when I was sitting on a train some years ago. I had my headphones on, I was listening to a piece of music which was really moving me, and I was sketching in my sketchbook, and it suddenly struck me, wow, that this piece of music that was created by these musicians, these artists, they've put their soul experience into the creation of this piece of music. And in turn, that piece of music is affecting me and changing my heart, and with that changed heart, I'm creating a piece of artwork. I'm moved by this music, and I'm creating a piece of artwork that's coloured by my experience of that music. And that piece of artwork that I create is going to do the same thing in turn to someone else, and then it goes on.
I like this. It's like an ecology of soul or something.
Yeah. And I felt like it was this moment of that felt potent, and I wanted to make a painting about it. So the Alchemist painting is, from the musicians' instruments come these ribbons of sound, and they go down and they become the stripes of her dress, which are all different colours, and then they go through the heart like blood, and then they come out the other end at the hem of her dress, and they become the pigments that fall into the pots of paint. So the sound, the kind of the soul in the music is moving like blood through her and being transmuted by her as an artist, as an alchemist herself, and changed into the paint with which she will then paint another piece of art that will then go on and change somebody else in turn.
Do you remember what the music was that you were listening to?
I don't. But I listen to a lot of folk music from Eastern Europe and the Balkans, and not only that, but it was maybe something from that part of the world that was moving me in that moment. I should remember because it was such a moment. But and it feels like it describes that job quite well of an artist as alchemist, and the unique quality or skill that all of those of us who are artists in all sorts of ways have of changing things. You know, that this alchemy is real. You know, we can really make gold out of something else. And you know when you have that experience of a piece of artwork, music, theatre, writing, whatever, when it's gold in your soul, in your belly, in your heart, when it's done something to you, and we need that. We desperately need that. And to go back to what you were just saying about the people's experience of sort of generalised experience of beauty. If you compare that to the kind of artworks that we see, and what a lot of people feel like they might say to you, oh, well, I don't really like art, or I don't understand it. If a lot of the art that is sort of generally around is ugly, actually, you know, there's art that's about an idea, and then there's art that's about the beauty in it, and I find that so much of it is actually not very nice to look at. You know, the art, so that this idea of not understanding it is more actually it not responding in your belly to it. You know, it's actually quite simple. If you see something and it moves you and you love it, whether that's because of the colour or the story or the arrangement, you know, or whatever it is, you don't need intellect to be able to respond to it, because it's it's
just
another
let it go
part
deeper
of you.
than your head.
Yeah, it's another part of you that's responding, and the reason that people maybe say that they don't understand it is because their body isn't actually responding to it, and there's or possibly that they're having a sensory repulsion to it, that they don't like it actually, but the head is saying, well, it's art, maybe I don't know, you know. And it's not their fault either, because we're just sort of marinated in anaesthetic habits that sort of shut us down. Yes, and ugly stuff everywhere. There's ugly stuff everywhere.
To the ugly stuff. So it's sort of it's maybe a good survival move to shut down.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. Because if you leave your senses open all the time to all these channels, it's quite an onslaught. Yeah,
that's a kind of armour we're talking about. But there's a different kind of armour that you could call soul armour, and that is drawing on your tradition as a living force and nature as a living body, maybe, and where those overlap. And you know, you have a whole bunch of people who you feel a strong resonance with, people in your community, but dead figures who you just absolutely love what they stood for, going back hundreds, thousands of years. You can have relationships with all those and draw on their thought and their art and how they lived, how they spoke, and what they wrote. And that feels like, you know, maybe 3-4 years ago I started really like reading a lot of poetry. I got to know Terry Windling, and she recommended doing a School of Myth with Martin Shaw. Did a wilderness vigil, 4-day, 4-night fast in an ancient woodland. Studied archetypal psychology and Iain McGilchrist, and all of that, and becoming a father as well. These are all life-changing things, but one thing that they do together is they give you a soul armour, and they liquefy your imagination and your thinking a bit. And for me, that's been really useful, and I would like other people to sort of be able to enjoy that as well, and from that comes a sort of an awakening of the senses as well, the senses and imagination kind of going together, helping each other out, so that the world glows more. The things that the plants, the hawthorns, the grasses, the buildings, the light, even on, you know, a brutal pebble dash building, the slant slash down through and it lands on a poor person playing the tin whistle or something. You know, there's a lot of beauty that there's a fire in things, and you can see it. That's not a literal fire.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That the kind of star blood of everything. It's there, and I know that we're lucky, you know, to you talking about this community of, you know, Terry and Martin, and, you know, that to have other people around you who talk in this language as well, and to not feel like you're mad, to feel the world in that way, and the more people are having these conversations and talking about this aliveness that can get so buried inside us and in the world, and how myth and story and art can keep this alive and really transmute it for everyone, you know, and not for just for humans either, you know, for the world. It's an offering to all that is. It's like a it's necessary. Certainly, that for me, that's been my experience. This communicating this stuff feels. It hasn't been a choice. It's something that I've always known that I have to do, and I'm lucky, having grown up with parents who are artists too, and knowing, I suppose, as a child that the soul in things, it matters and can be talked about and made into art, and that's important, that matters, not only in a world of having a job, you know. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that as an artist, but, you know, it's so vital, and the balance has been tipped so much towards, you know, economics, that that those of us who are talking this kind of language, I don't know, I just celebrate the fact that the threads are going out in the world, and
I was speaking to my friend Jen last night, and she was saying that actually there are maybe a lot more people inclined this way than might seem apparent.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about that. I was thinking, okay, so we've had, like, you know, since the scientific revolution, and we've had, I'm thinking about all the things that have tilted us into the quality of attention of the left hemisphere, as Iain McGilchrist would say, which is like characterised by the high functioning bureaucrat.
Yeah, but also that, like, really focused.
Yeah, hyper precise.
I'm going to get that thing over there, just that, and all the rest, all the stuff around here is ignored.
Yeah, because he would say we have two hemispheres for an important reason.
Yeah.
Many animals do.
Yeah.
The left affords precise, sort of almost scalpel vision and scalpel language, and helps us manipulate and control the world. And the right it characterises more like a wise sage.
Yes.
Not a kind of fluffy romantic that it's been characterised in the past, but on every level, even old-fashioned IQ, the right hemisphere is the master. His book, The Master and His Emissary.
Yes. Yeah. And he talks about the fact that we've got it very much the wrong way round, and he talks about these fascinating experiments that they've done on people where they only have one side of the brain online, whether that's because they've had a stroke or because they're able to sort of switch between two with their dark magic of scientists. I'm not quite sure what they do. And then the difference between asking questions to somebody with this side online or this side online is fascinating. The kinds of answers they get and give, and the adamantness of somebody telling something that is actually not true, but about their own body, for example,
I use the same example. So if the left hemisphere is intact and the right is damaged,
yes,
they will claim that maybe they can't move their right arm,
yes,
and they'll say, I just moved it, I just picked up the cup,
yes, when
they'll show them a film of
yes,
you didn't, and they'll say, no, you're tricking me,
it must have been someone else's arm.
In complete logic, seemingly reasoned argument, in their mind, in their experience, they think they're being logical.
Yes.
And this reminds me of how certain materialistic scientists kind of think in a kind of scalpel language. And we know the truth, and the truth is discovered in these precise ways. And those ways are very important, and McGilchrist is a big defender of them. But the best scientists don't speak and think like that. They know that precision and rigor is very important, but then imagination is equally as important.
Because on its own, it's useless, and actually that if we talk about scientists, creative thinking is really necessary, and they don't have the incredible ideas without that creative thinking that says, well, I wonder what happens if we do this and this, and that Iain McGilchrist talks about the right hemisphere being, where an animal needs the left hemisphere to find and get a prey animal or a tool. The right hemisphere is the thing that is online, that tells you about your entire environment, whether something is going to get you while you're getting the thing, so that it's got much more of a sense of nuance, but also a sort of wider, sort of intuitive, sort of this kind of sense of the forest behind you. And if you think about that sense in yourself of kind of knowing, of being able to pick up on a nervous system level of what's going on in a room, or of creative thinking, it's really necessary, and it's certainly been dismissed so much, hasn't it, in
yes,
many, for centuries, as being also a little bit of a feminine trait as well, of being a little bit intuitive and not precise, and not rigorous and scientific, but like guesswork. But what he's saying is that the left hemisphere is useless without this imaginative side.
Yeah, and also that it's not only imaginative, it has a greater capacity for reason.
Yes,
and
because it takes all of the different things into account. So when a decision is being made, it looks at all the different parts and not just this one part.
Yeah, totally. I think a way people, this is a tangent on something that we'll return back to in a minute, but it's so interesting. I've just got to say, the way people can relate to this is if you have a creative practice, then you're in a certain quality of attention and a state of mind when you do that is very, very different from filling in bank statements and doing all the admin and bureaucratic work that you seem to have to do piles of in this world that we live in.
Yeah.
And so, I've actually cut out some of my jobs and projects that were making me do that bureaucratic stuff more, sort of quality of attention of the left hemisphere a lot of the time, to protect the creative work. And that feels like an essential move.
Well done.
McGilchrist's work helped me frame that and make those decisions. So I've got to go and say thank you to him at some point. I wonder if he'd have a chat with me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. But we were talking about. So my friend Jen said she thinks that this animistic sense of things as alive, and that the boundaries between a human and the more than human world not being actually as ossified as it can seem, and maybe it is a lot of the time. And on the one hand, I could say, well, I disagree with you, Jen, because we've got 2,000 years of monotheism. We've got a massive weight of. Actually, I need to nuance the monotheism thing, because there's a great mystical tradition in monotheistic religions, and very unusual fluid thought, but the suppression of Aphrodite we're talking about before, that courageous sensuality and feeling.
And obviously you're talking more about the West.
Yes, exactly, about the West, different in the East. There are all kinds of barriers historically that have coagulated into what we've got today. But, and I think this is the point David Abram makes, is that, we have had a long time of that, and it is a great wall that we have to liquefy or find a way through. But even more ancient than that is that old reciprocity and relationship with whatever the hell the planet is. Like the astronauts who go up, they see it with their eyes from up there, and they have this overwhelming experience of, I can't remember, there's some observer effects, or they've got some dull name for it, but it's a profound and experience of beauty and depth and meaning that astronauts who are trained in like probably science and engineering have often, very often, when they see.
Imagine what that must be like. And also, as I'm sure many scientists say, that this bit we're talking about is very, very tiny compared to the size of human history, in terms of what the animal that we are and the brains that we have, are still those old brains that live in a world that doesn't have service stations and social media. That we're still the animal that we were back then. We haven't, our bodies are the same, actually, trying to interface with all of this. But in that sense, the boundary is as permeable as it was back then, because it's not about whether we choose it to be or not. It's happening. We're not in charge of how permeable it is in that sense. That we have these overlays of how we describe our experience and whether we shut things out or not. But there are creatures inside us keeping us alive.
I feel like that's something to lean on and reach for. But we're going off on realms of ideas and philosophy and stuff here, and it's great, I love it, but I want to talk about how some of this kind of manifests embodied in an actual life, your life, because you've lived quite an unusual one. This is one thing we have in common, me being born in a circus, and not that you were born in a circus, but the spirit of that life, that creative community and life on the road, travelling and trying to just hustle and make a living through ingenuity and creativity, as you travel around the country. And there's a sort of romance of the road and whole thing connected to like the troubadours and all this. And you've I think it's beautiful. I want that for my children, and you've lived through that. So I want to know, like, how has it been? How has that kind of happened?
Well, it is both romantic, magical, and extremely hard, all at once. To answer succinctly, but I was born in London to two sculptors who were also doing that tricky thing of trying to be artists and make a living, which is not easy. But they did it and raised three of us. When I was young, before the age of 5, we travelled over to Europe in a van that my dad had converted, also a Bedford like my later trucks, and he was a wood carver and wanted to learn the wood carving tradition from a particular place in Bavaria, Oberammergau, which is known for its wood carving tradition there, and it's an amazing place. There are fairy tale scenes painted on the outsides of the houses, and it's quite a conservative southern Bavarian place with cows and with their cowbells walking through, and the church bells and the Alps there. It was utterly idyllic, and I remember it's very much gone in deep snow in the winter, and we went over to Italy a bit and through France, but I know for them, in my memory, it's just I've been left with this kind of richness of the magic of the little snippets of the inside of the van, and that I remember. And my mum talks about staying back at the van with me as a baby in the baby bouncer in the doorway of the van, and my dad would go in a little folding bike into the town and carve in the workshop there and bring back lumps of wood for my mum to carve, which she would clamp onto the tailgate of the truck and carve while I was in the baby bouncer. But they had almost no money. In the winter we moved into a house that was completely empty, and the nuns would leave packages of food and clothes on our doorstep. But it was magical, and yet they also tell stories of how these terribly stressful times of breaking down whilst going over the Alps, and things happening in the middle of the night and the pissing rain, and just I can see the difference in my experience and memory of it to theirs, but definitely that travelling spirit has stayed with me, and I have kind of like two halves of myself. There's a sort of cottage self that likes to kind of hole up with my fire and shelves of things and coziness and a village, but and then there's the other half of me that wants to be on the road.
Like Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah, although he didn't know about that other half, did he, at first? And I have travelled in Bedford trucks again twice since then. The first time round, I was travelling around England and selling my artwork as I went, in different towns and cities, using a peddler's licence, as I was just telling you about.
And in Scotland, west coast
and
of
in Scotland, yes, in Scotland, went quite far up, that was really an amazing experience in terms of immunising me against all kinds of reactions to my artwork that I might have been afraid of before that, because I was displaying my work not to a pre-selected audience, but to whoever happened to be in a high street of a random town, and so I got all kinds of responses, both amazingly strong love and repulsion as well, people who just walked past and didn't understand. It was definitely, the hustle was, it was it meant parking up somewhere, getting up really early in the morning and coming into the town, finding a spot, and negotiating with the other buskers and beggars and people who found their spots also early in the morning in a town, and displaying my work, and then negotiating with the police if they came by and wanted to move us on. And
so you're on the west coast of Scotland in the port town of Oban,
yes,
as a young woman, and we've got all these ships going off to the Outer Hebrides and all those islands, and you have to acquire something called a peddler's license.
Yes. So I was living in Scotland originally, in South Lanarkshire, when me and my ex-partner built that truck, and then we travelled all around Scotland quite a bit, and England. Peddler's license is something you buy from the police. It's an extremely archaic piece of documentation, And usually when you go into a police station and ask for one, they sort of don't really know what you're talking about, and they ask a colleague, and then somebody shuffles around in the folders on a shelf and looking for these things, and then you buy it. In those days it was like 12 quid for the whole year, and it's got this amazing archaic language on it that tells you what it's for, what it covers, the I can't remember it now, the hawkers and menders of chairs and people with barrow carts, and it's just wonderful. That these are the sorts of people this is for.
Is it a scroll?
It should have been. It was just a piece of paper. Then it got updated, and you have to have your photo. When I first had one, they literally, the police person would just write your description on it, so the brown hair, and your height, and that's sort of it, and your name, and that was kind of it. Then you show this to them to the police if they come by when you're selling on the street, and where they may be lenient or they may not, depending on who they were and the day and the town and all of those things. And
what were you selling?
So prints of my artworks. So like this kind of thing in frames, which in those days were just sort of cheap wooden frames that then I remember buying wood stain and laying all the frames out the night before in a like IKEA car park and painting them all with wood stain to make them look less ugly. And then putting all the pictures in the frames, and then I would find a disused shop or bank or something to prop them all up just along the pavement. And yeah, it was quite an experience, just in terms of living on the road and encountering people's prejudice of travellers and trying to find somewhere to park up and sleep the night, and finding places to park up for longer, and bits of land where you've been given permission to be there, and that encountering definitely entering that world of the misfit and the liminal space of not being one thing or another, and people being very suspicious of you, and the relief when people were warm and friendly, and expecting that they wouldn't be, because of the fear that people hold of those who are not normal. And then you fast forward a few years, so in that truck I arrived in Devon, and I didn't realise it, but I ended up falling in love with Dartmoor, and so Devon sort of captured me, and I actually arrived in Devon to visit Terry, and it was that was why I came, and it was just going to be a week passing through. And
how did you meet her? How did you know that?
Our works crossed paths. I can't remember whether I encountered her or vice versa first on the internet. In the days when I was travelling, I was writing a blog a lot, and a lot of people read my encounters and adventures on the road and off the road, and before children I had a lot of time to spend a long time writing long blog posts with lots of photographs of paintings in their progress, and I love doing it, and these days it seems almost impossible because I have small children. But yeah, I stopped off in Devon to visit Terry, and just got completely captured in my heart by Dartmoor, and so I'm still here. But then fast forward a few years, and I did it again, built a travelling storytelling theatre on the back of another even more vintage Bedford, with my children's father, and we I guess many people watching will know that we did a big crowdfunder and raised money through people's love of the idea, I suppose, and of our work to create this strange beast that was and is Hedgespoken. And the idea in the name came from this thought that, the hedge has always been really fundamental in my sort of thinking, both as a concept and literally the hedge, the plants that are in the hedge and the creatures that are in the hedge, and the hedgerow being something that is very much of this land, especially down here in Devon. They're very high, so when you're driving down the lanes you can't see anything other than the hedge, which is right up here. So literal hedgerows, but also the hedge being the place where the travellers dwelt, the gypsies, the Romany people would have been people of the hedge. In fact, the Romany word for hedgehog is hochi-wichi, or pal of the boar, and the pal of the boar means brother of the hedge.
The boar is in the wild boar?
No. There's a Romany word of
pal of the boar,
brother of the hedge.
Okay, sorry.
So and the hedgehog for them is a totemic animal. Not only did they used to eat it, sometimes baked in clay, but I think for me also it was quite representative of, because hedgehogs also have been people have had these ideas about hedgehogs that they would steal apples and also milk from the cows. I don't quite know how they thought hedgehogs would be suckling from cows in the night, but that they would be maligned in a similar way that to gypsies, that people dismissed them as being dangerous, people who would steal things. That there's this, because of the fear that I mentioned just now, that travelling people who come from somewhere else and who don't live in the same way that most people do, then it does awaken this fear. And so all of these kind of ideas came into the name of Hedgespoken, that the words are spoken from the hedge, in a way that they're like the stories are coming from the wild. They're coming from the edge place. They're coming from the edge place where these misfits dwell, whether it's metaphorically the edge of a culture, of a society, or whether it's literal hedgerows. That's, for me, it's been an idea that I've been fascinated with for a long time. That this place, this edge place, is really potent, and the art that comes from that place is potent because it isn't one thing or another, and it kind of harks back a little bit to what we were talking about, the land of Faerie as well, because it's something about the border between that land and this land, whatever those two lands are, is potent and dangerous and interesting, and definitely fizzing with the life force that you were talking about. So yes, there's the idea in this word had all of those things in it. And so we built this truck. The building was actually done by the amazing Leo Singleton, who crafted this incredible thing. It has a fold down stage, and the roof lifts up, and it's very beautiful inside and outside. We often get comments from people who saw it, and it's quite a creature. And we travelled around a lot slower, I have to say, because it's a very big old vehicle that goes very, very slowly, telling stories mostly at festivals and gatherings, and sometimes on the side of the road to very small audiences, and also displaying my artwork on the side.
Amazing.
Yeah, and now I am in a cottage phase with young children. We did have our eldest son as a little one in the truck as well. So we created it just after he was born, and then if some years went by and time to be in a house came. Now I'm in a just moved house, so I'm in another little village not very far from the edge of the moor, and I'm nesting and making home in that way again. So it's cottage time for now, I think, as my boys get older, but I definitely haven't left the road behind. I think it will come round again. I'm not quite sure what is coming next and what shape of things is coming next. Hedgespoken, of course, also has a publishing arm, so it also exists in the form of a small press, and we publish books, poetry, myth, story, and prints of my artwork.
Yeah, I've read some of them. They're amazing. There's one, it's a collection. You have one in, Tom has one in there, Terry, Martin.
Yes.
Some of the folks.
Yes.
Those are great.
The 7 Doors in an Unyielding Stone.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. Yeah, it's like a little collection of spell books.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And don't we need those?
Yes, we do. Yeah, I've actually taken those out and spoken them out loud to certain places up in the
Yes, you're
Northeast.
not the only one, actually. A lot of people tell us that, and they send us photographs of the book next to some incredible wild place. It's really wonderful to hear that, actually, because it feels like that the words are in the right place, being spoken in the right place.
Yeah. This thing about soul making that you can do on the road or in a home or wherever you are, whatever kind of life that you live, that is connected to beauty, like in the ancient Greek Apuleius tale of Psyche, the wild third daughter of a king, served in the temple of love and beauty of Aphrodite, who was jealous of her because she had some kind of indelible beauty that maybe Aphrodite didn't have, and so that thing of soul making today, in where social media has just gone absolutely mental, things like you're talking about this beautiful truck that you lived in and travelled with, that now has become a thing, like on social media, like van life.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it.
and you get all these kind of like
they kill
magical,
everything.
Yeah.
So annoying.
It's a cannibalistic thing going on with stuff that's maybe better kept offline, away from screens sometimes. But I'm thinking of the van life, the magical images of. There are some insta witches, you could call them, and beautifully curated copper bowls and glassware and coloured liquids, and I like this stuff, but I've also got suspicious of it because of this.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, we're saturated with this AI-backed social media, and the social media companies have trillions of pounds and more money than countries, and there are more people on them that are in a lot of countries.
Yes.
Probably any country.
Yes.
And so they're monumentally powerful forces in our lives that we have to try and navigate now.
Yeah.
And so anyone wanting to do anything has to use social media.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Pretty much. If you're any kind of artist, small business, and you don't use social media, then
you don't exist.
Good luck to you. Yeah, I fucking hope that you succeed.
Yeah.
But the odds are stacked against you, and the odds are still stacked against you if you do use it.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly powerful demon. It's good to imagine it as some kind of demon or behemoth monster, or something that just makes you wake up and realise the power of it on our culture, our lives.
Yes.
And so I was wondering, what are your thoughts about this? Because you seem to have done this social media thing in a way that has some integrity and creativity.
Thank you.
And without you don't seem to have been swallowed by it or got addicted to it. because it's designed on the precepts of addiction psychology.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what it wants to do.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on that one?
How to survive social media? Well, I'm glad you think that my online presence still has some integrity and soul there, because absolutely it's a demon, and it's designed to swallow us all. I don't know. I mean, as in the good old days of blogging, you know, I even though it was a sort of form of social media, it was before what we have now very much, and it actually, you know, I loved to write and to create these long pieces with beautiful imagery, and so I was, in a sense, in the same way as creating a website, you know, kind of curating a beautiful place so that people could, so it's a kind of hospitality in a way. People could come to my place and it would be beautiful and inspiring, and it fed me as well to be sharing this with people. And I think that I discovered, certainly through doing that being a bit of an introvert and a hermit-like artist, and in fact the blog was called The Hermitage, named after an old house I used to live in, I realised that actually it fed me as well when people were fed by what I shared, and that it helped to spur me on to create more when I made genuine connection to somebody else, so that, you know, there's this sort of horrible kind of sea of technology in between you, but through it you can reach another person, a real person who sees soul in what you do, and they respond, and you can hear from what they say that it really has gone in, and that if you have a tendency to be a bit solitary, it's real soul food for me, you know, to realise that, oh, this is what it's for. You know, I do half of the work, I create this work, and then I give it to people, and then the next bit is for them. And it's not the same if you just stay in your garret and paint away and don't share it with anyone, because it is for the world, it is for everyone out there, and so I suspect that when I've, you know, since moving that onto the social media behemoth, it's kind of I've tried to keep hold of that memory of that's why I'm doing it, that it's to share it with other people. It's actually harder to sort of see that, because Facebook or Instagram, whatever, is in the way, but it is also the means by which I reach those people, because I don't have an agent or a big gallery representing me yet. I have to do that reaching. And, you know, I'm not immune to the addiction like anyone else. You know, I can find myself going down a tunnel in, you know, on the internet, and you wake up, you know, where have I been? Get away from me, you devil, you know, it really is. But I think also in terms of how much I share, I'm private as well, so I never put photographs of my children on there, and I don't share all of my personal stuff online because I'm protecting it. But at the same time, I'm trying to be real in what I share. So I mean, you know, I find Instagram utterly depressing in that it's. I want to see other artists' work, to be inspired, and now it's like endless people promoting themselves and prancing in front of the camera, and everything's shiny and fake, and it's like where I just want to see somebody's painting. I don't want everyone to feel like they need to have some kind of faux soulful insight about every single photograph they post. I just want to see like what you're painting at the moment. You know, that's, you know, it's created this like desperation in people that every single thing they do has to be a promotion, and it's
super profound.
It's like utterly like this sickness. It's it's the effect it's having on me is making me more and more irritated with all the people who work in the kind of spiritual field, if you could call it that, because it's all of it is losing its protein. And it makes me feel grumpier and grumpier. Like, but where are the real people? Like, where's the authenticity? And I'm sure that everyone's feeling this. Everyone's kind of baffled by the strange world that it's become.
I like to imagine this as a sort of blessing deficit disorder, where people don't feel like you are a sovereign human being that has intrinsic value, and the institutions of the culture and their experience of the world, and often their own parents, friends around them, is not. There's an absence of true blessings where a person gives that to someone, and maybe because of that, people feel like, okay, well, how can I get it? Well, I can get it on social media,
but it's empty.
It's empty. And I wrote a short essay on this called "Blessing Deficit Disorder," which you can find on Talismans Against Boring Culture, my Substack channel. It's shiny.
Quick bit of advertising in there. Ironic advertising.
I'm taking the piss out of myself. No, I really struggle with how to do it without compromising your soul, your integrity, and getting devoured by the beast of it.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I suppose treading this line with an awareness always of actually how you're feeling. So, I might go quite a long time without posting anything because I just can't. I can't. There's nothing there. I'm too consumed by my real life and feelings, and you're supposed to be posting every so often.
It wants you to post every day.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, so I'm just not going to. And it means that I don't get as many followers or whatever, blah blah. But it's I can only do what I can do. But at the same time, running a business, trying to make a living from selling my work, it's tricky. It's tricky, and I'm skint. I'm always skint. It's like I haven't really figured that one out yet.
Yeah, you take a financial hit to maintain your integrity.
Yeah. It's definitely, and I feel like what you're talking about, this blessing deficit, feels like this idea of hungry ghosts that that are everywhere, kind of like needing more, and there is that feeling in social media now that there's this kind of demand for affirmations that sort of all around you, but it feels kind of empty in the sense that it's like you say, it's part, it's designed to work on this addiction mechanism and little serotonin hits or whatever it is going on. It's not lasting real nourishment from actual human interaction, which isn't to say that there isn't genuine real human connection possible through social media. So it's
right, true.
It's you meet interesting people that are real actual humans on the other side of it, which is the confusing thing about it, because it is devilish, but there are real people in there as well.
Yeah.
I'm delighted when I find them.
Right.
I wouldn't have met you, I guess, without No, that was a real recommendation from a real human.
That came through Terry Windling.
Terry,
I would not have found Terry Windling. Yes. Had it not been for this technology.
There we go.
So yeah, we're not Luddites, and I love technology.
Yeah.
I love invention.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. I just don't want it to be digested by Moloch.
Yeah.
That's not too much to ask.
Yeah. No. I guess we need spells, don't we?
Yeah, counter spells.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you seem to be weaving one with your life and your work.
Well, thank you. Protection magic is something I'm interested in, definitely. And like the markings that we make on our houses, and the little touch woods, and the little things that we say to protect ourselves, that in many cultures in the world are still very much sort of up here in people's awareness. In our culture, maybe we think that we don't believe in magic anymore, but we still do touch wood or cross our fingers or say things that to ward off some devil that might be listening, to jinx what we've just said. Those little magical talismanic things that are in our lives are still there, and they exist in the visual world as well. In the way that we mark our houses, the patterns that we put on things, and the shapes of the way we arrange our rooms, and all of this sort of thing. And I feel like, even just wearing your socks inside out and things like that,
Your socks inside out?
They're not, no. but I know that some people do. It's a protection magic thing, not just your socks, other items of clothing, but
yeah, we both have
exactly,
kind of
yeah. And I kind of can't. I have to wear those things. It feels like jewelry for me is definitely, the way that we use those things. It's very not conscious, but protection magic does feel necessary in this world.
For sure, yeah, and I like this idea as well. There's a book called Making Magic by Brianna. I can't remember her name. I'll put the link there. But where would you say is a good place to go for people to try and find some protection magic or counter spells?
Well, it depends what culture you are coming from, really. Because I think it's that matters, where your roots are in terms of your land and your people, and I don't know loads about protection magic, but I'm fascinated by it in this idea of how we weave magic into patterns. Like in the carpet weaving in many parts of the world, there are symbols in there that have meaning and are magic spells. There's this amazing woman called Sheila Payne who has just recently died. Actually, she was a writer and kind of anthropologist, and she did this amazing many journeys all right across Europe and into the Middle East and Asia, and right down as far as Afghanistan, I think, all in search of this one particular amuletic device. So it's a particular shape that was a magic spell, and she was looking for it in the cultures, in the visual culture and kind of everyday objects of peoples from very different cultures, but seeing it crop up again and again, and seeing that it must have really strong, potent and very ancient magic. She's written a whole trilogy of books. The Afghan Amulet is the first one, which I find really fascinating. I think they're out of print. You can hunt for them secondhand. And then there's a man called Brian Hoggard who studies the protection magic in houses. So if you're looking at old houses in England, for example, when people are refurbishing old houses, they often find objects in the walls and under the floors, like witch bottles and dried cats and things like that, which were put there as spells to protect the house owners from witches or spirits coming to get them. The witch bottle, which actually I have done a painting of some years ago, the idea was that you would have a bottle into which you put something from your own body, whether that was nail clippings or urine or hair clippings. And then you would also put some maybe thorns or some bent iron nails, and then you would bury it under the hearth or under the door sill, somewhere where there was an opening in the house, so that a place where something could get in. So if a spirit of a witch had been sent out to get you, she would come down the chimney, for example, and to get you. And the first thing she would encounter would be something that seems like you because it's of your body. And so she'd go into the bottle to get you and get caught on the nails or the thorns, and then she'd be trapped in the bottle. And so my painting is of the witch's spirit trapped in the bottle. So I wondered what that would be like for you, as if you were a witch, to be trapped in a bottle.
Is that painting here in this room?
It's not, no, it's sold years ago, but you can buy prints from hedgespokenpress.com. So he studies this and has just published a book, the name of which escapes me. He studies these kind of ancient devices that people use to protect their homes and spirits.
Is there one in your new home?
There is, actually. Yeah, I painted a house spirit some years ago, which is on a big piece of wood about so high, and it's a being, a house spirit who has images all over his body of kind of homely things. It's got quite a kind of East European folk feel to it. And there's like a hearth in the middle, and there's bread, and there's animals, and there's it's got a sort of homely, kindly feeling to it, and it's standing there in my new home. It's come with me.
I like this. I need to listen to this, because people who are drawn to, the quest and going off and doing the creative mission sometimes neglect the house. Like my house is all kinds of housework that needs doing, like odd jobs and stuff that I kind of habitually just walk past and go down to the workshop to work on a story. But I'm trying to solve that one, and one of the things that's helping with it is to realise that the most mundane seeming domestic activities are mythic terrain, and you can, like the stuff you're talking about like a soul making in you're creating a space, like a vessel, a holding space where certain qualities of experience and attention and feelings will be more ready to come out.
Yeah, it's really important in your home as well, because you're taking care of yourself and your family, and it's the place where your spirit and your body is nurtured. And it is has been traditionally the domain of women to be the homemakers in many cultures. But things like weaving, those arts that are the kind of making the fabric of the home. If you think of peoples in North Africa, for example, who have tent kind of structures which would have been woven with these symbols, that the actual making of the fabric of the home is like a beautiful and slow art of this kind of dedicating time and skill. It feels really important, and certainly for me, having just moved house a couple of days ago, everything's in disarray, but I'm already feeling the different feeling of this new house. I mean, it's an old house, but it's new to me, and just being reminded of different spaces having different qualities and different capacity for holding, and it feels really good. It feels like this is going to be a good time in this place, and I don't know the village very well, and so I've got to meet new neighbours and so on, and find the new walks and all of that. But the house itself feels like good. It feels friendly.
Well, your studio has that quality as well, and I feel like it's been subtly influencing the conversation here. I feel welcome and relaxed, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about is embodied here in the things of your studio, and all the amazing artworks and materials and tools that you've got lying around. So thanks for inviting me in.
Oh, it's been really lovely to have you and to have such a wide-ranging and homely conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Good to meet you, Ben.
If you liked this video and you want more of these to exist, then the best thing you can do is support me on Patreon. Even small pledges there help, because it's a boost to my spirits and it makes me want to do more. And also, every bit of financial support frees up time for creative projects such as these, making videos, conversations with inspiring people that are somehow involved in the work of re-ensouling the world, is how I see it. So that would be greatly appreciated, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it.